tonight, folks, we're going to be going through the kind of the background, if you like, to Marvel Crisis Protocol, kind of the basics of the rules, how the game plays, what you can expect if you don't know anything about the game, so learn a bit more about it, how it plays, and then I'll also talk a little bit about the best way to kind of get started, and then maybe expand from there as well. So first off, just to kind of give you the background, Marvel Crisis Protocol is a game by a company called Atomic Mass Games. This was their first game, and it's a tactical miniatures game for 2 players in which hand-picked squads of Marvel characters clash over a customized battlefield and attempt to be the first to complete their mission objectives. Now, the game launched back in November 2019, so if you think about it, it's just about to become 2 years old now. And when you think most of its life been through a global pandemic and lockdowns when people weren't playing games, it's quite impressive to see how it's kind of grown and how it's come out of that kind of lockdown period quite strongly, really. And I think the big appeal, like unsurprisingly, really, is the miniatures themselves. People love Marvel, and kind of I think during lockdown people enjoyed kind of just painting something a little bit different. And there was a good community around a really, really good tabletop simulator version of this game that I think got people playing kind of sort of casually and competitively through those lockdown periods. But it seems to have come out the other end really strong. There's a lot of kind of noise about it at the moment, and I'm hearing about more and more people picking the game up, and I'm hearing more and more events happening, and it seems to be the kind of the game at the moment. So tonight, like I say, I'm going to take you through the basics of how to play the game, and really what makes it one of probably the best miniatures games that I've actually ever played. So there's also, as I briefly mentioned before we started streaming there's affiliate links in the description. If you want to take a look at anything for Goblin Gaming and you want to pick anything up, please do check them, but by all means do not feel obliged, and please support your local stores where you play your games, and make sure that your money goes as far as it can if you don't have a local store. So before we get to the minis themselves, because I know those are the kind of bits that you'll be excited about, let's talk about the missions, like the kind of like the sort of, it's really the backbone of this game is the mission system, and about sort of why are you playing, for example, and we use the missions to actually inform us on how to choose our squads to play as well. So players create a mission by combining 2 different types of what are called crisis cards. You can see one of them on the screen here. And each mission always consists of one of each type of crisis. There is one called a secure mission, and there is one called an extraction mission. And the secure sees characters kind of like sort of trying to hold onto an objective on the battlefield, and you kind of control it each turn. You try to control that objective, whereas an extraction will see characters trying to pick up sort of objectives from the battlefield and trying to kind of hold onto them, escort them if you like, and extract them until the end of the game. So missions are basically how players score victory points, and they're the most important thing in the game. You can fight your enemy as much as you want, but essentially what you're doing by fighting against the enemy is you're trying to stop them scoring victory points. You're trying to stop them scoring the objectives. So it does make it very thematic and very interesting. It's not just a case of like a fight to the death type thing. You really do have to kind of play to the mission. And the objective of the game is to be the first person to score 16 victory points. So you can see here on the screen, this is a crisis card, and a crisis card is made up of the following parts, and I've numbered them up there as well. So it's just off to the right there at the top. It's number 1 that tells you the name of the crisis card. In this case, it is Riot's Spark Over Extremis 3.0. That's just so you can kind of reference it and you know which one you're using. Number 2 at the top there is the crisis type. Now you can see this one here is this. Sorry, I should say the crisis type. It's the kind of the blue circle that goes around the outside. So you can see this one here is a secure one. They normally have, I think if you can see like that one, I don't know whether that's close enough. They have like a red ring around them, and those ones are the extraction type. Now, number 3 is the number in the center there where it says 17. Now, this is the maximum threat. This indicates basically how many points each player will build their squad to. So this is what I meant by these are really important, and this determines how you build your squad. So this is the equivalent of like saying like this is going to be a 17-point game. So you don't actually know how many points you're going to play until you settle on which mission you're going to play. We'll come on to that when we start talking about kind of building our squads and things like that. But currently in the game, there's lots of these extra crisis cards. They come in packs as well as you're buying them, so it kind of expands the game as you buy more stuff. And currently, I think I'm right in saying the highest kind of crisis, the highest threat level at the minute is 20 points, and the lowest is 14 points. 17 tends to be the most popular, and there's a reason 17 is popular. Is it's kind of a midpoint anyway. But also, if you buy the core set, it comes with 2 17-point squads that you can use out of the box. So 17 tends to be quite common. Number 4 there is the one on the left hand side there. That is the setup. This basically indicates the type of objective tokens that you're going to be placing on the battlefield, and it also references a map as well. I think this one references map D. And in the core set, you basically get these cards, which have these kind of layouts. And it tells you, I'm sure you won't be able to see that very well, but it does tell you where the tokens go for those particular missions. Number 5 across on the right hand side there is the scoring. This explains to you how you will score in this game. So for example, this one says players score 1 victory point for each extremist console they secure during the cleanup phase. We'll come on to what phases and things are later on. So it tells you how you score the victory points. And then at the bottom there, number 6 is the rules. This explains how characters can interact with any of the crisis objective tokens. So this one is basically saying you can remove 1 damage from a non-dazed character within range 2 of the extremist console. So this basically kind of lets you kind of heal up your characters when you're doing this mission as well. And then bottom right hand corner, number 7 there is basically which set the card is from, so that you can see this one is from the core set. And as you buy kind of expansions and characters over time, they'll have different sort of symbols in there, purely just to reference which pack they come from, but it makes no difference to the game itself. So those are basically your crisis cards. And at the start of the game, you will randomly select sort of 2 crisis cards, one from your opponent, one from you, and then one of you will select which one you will use for the threat level. But we'll come on to that kind of stuff in a bit. So we've got a threat level. What we do, these are basically our characters and our character cards. And each character stat card lists all of the information that you need to know about the characters in order to use it during play. So you shouldn't have to reference the rulebook. All of the things your character can do are on one side of your card. Now here, what I am showing is these are the new style of cards. If you buy the kind of the core set and stuff, or any characters at the minute, you will get cards that look like this, basically, which are in like a portrait mode, if you like. The information on them is the same. All Atomic Mass games are doing is they're updating them for kind of future releases, and they're basically turning them sideways. They say they can get kind of more text on them that way, and it makes them a bit easier to read. But I'll kind of, everything I'm talking about now is basically kind of any updated stuff, but the gameplay is exactly the same, really. So the character cards have 2 sides. They have a healthy side, which is the side that you always start with, and an injured side. And basically you can tell which side is which, as you can see here in the kind of the top left hand corner of the card at the back. You can see those 4 circles there are a bit of like a tealy blue color. That's the healthy side, or the blue down the left hand side banner as well. And the injured side, those 4 circles in that white box are like an orange color, and there's always a bit of a red kind of side to the card as well. And these older ones are these kind of the original ones are the same as well. You can see it's kind of blue down this corner here. And then on the flip side, it's red on there as well. So during play, basically, as a character suffers an amount of wounds, it will get to a point where they run out of wounds, basically. They run out of health points. And this will basically daze the character. And what happens when a character is dazed is basically they take no further part in that particular round of the game. They can't score objectives or anything like that. But what they do is they then flip their card over in the next round to their injured side, which sounds like it should be a bad thing, but actually characters who are on their injured side can sometimes be a bit stronger. They basically kind of sort of like these are superheroes when they're beaten, basically when they're getting beaten up, they almost want to come back and fight even harder. So a lot of characters get even stronger on their injured side. So sort of taking a bit of damage is not always the worst thing in the world. So let's break down the rest of the parts of the stat card and give you a bit of a brief explanation about what they each represent. So you can see this was in the top left hand corner. Basically what you've got is you've got 1, 2 and 3 are those 3 coloured circles, the red, yellow and blue circles along the top there. The one on the left is the kind of the red one with the fist inside is the physical defence, and this basically represents the character's ability to withstand physical attacks like punches and gunfire. And this number in here, 4, is the number of dice that the character will roll when he's defending against a physical attack from his opponent. The yellow one, number 2 there, is basically that is an energy defense. So this represents the character's ability to kind of sort of withstand energy attacks like kind of repulsor beams, lightning bolts kind of from sort of energy type characters. And again, this is the number of dice that you will roll if you are defending against an energy attack. And the one on the right hand side there, the blue one with the eye symbol in it, is mystic defense, and this represents the character's ability to withstand mystic attacks like sort of mental illusions and mind control. And again, this is the number of dice that you will roll, in this case 3, against a mystic attack. So then we have the 4 kind of teal circles, the one at the top left hand side there, the one with kind of like the heartbeat and the number 5 next to it. That is your stamina. That's the amount of damage that you can take before your character is either dazed, or once they lose all of their health on their injured side, they're basically knocked out and taken out of the game. Number 5, the one at the bottom there on the left hand side where it says number 2, is the size of the character. Characters are different sizes. You use the size for things like line of sight, and you always also use size for things like can certain models throw other models, because you can, in this game, unsurprisingly, sort of Hulk can pick up models and throw them around. Certain characters can kind of like mentally move characters around, and sometimes that's limited by the size of the character. So that's why that is used. Across to the right hand side, we've got the kind of like the weird kind of spider looking thing with the number 4 beside it. That is the threat level. This is the points that the character costs. So as you can see here, Captain America Steve Rogers costs 4 points, or 4 threat level, and that adds towards your total, which we then see on those crisis cards. In the game, the lowest is like 2-point characters, and the highest is like an 8-point character. So you can see there's a bit of a swing in there as well. Currently, there's new characters coming all the time, which will potentially change those limits. And the one at the bottom right hand corner there with the M beside it, number 7, is the speed of your model. So we'll talk a little bit in a second about how models move around, but basically they move around the battlefield, and there's 3 possible options of S, M and L, which is short, medium and long moves, and you use a measurement tool as opposed to a tape measure to be able to move you around, but we'll come on to that in a second. So this is the main kind of character card, and each character, when they come to activate, can make 2 activations, or 2 actions if you like, and common actions available to every character are being able to kind of move, like either sort of like walk or run or climb or something like that. They can attack, which is the kind of the bulk of the character card there with the number 3 on the right hand side, or they can use one of their superpowers, which is the things towards the bottom of the card there. Because some superpowers are classed as an action. Others are just classed as a superpower, and we'll come on to that bit in a second. So on the card, you can see in the top left-hand corner, we've got the character's name, in this case, Captain America. Underneath that, we have the character's alter ego. So, for example, it's their everyday persona of who the character is, and it's used to identify the character to make sure that you don't duplicate models. So, for example, there are 2 Captain Americas in the game. There is the Sam Wilson, the Falcon Captain America, and then there is the Steve Rogers Captain America. Now, you can take both Captain Americas in your squad. However, you couldn't take 2 Steve Rogers Captain Americas in your squad. So this is used to basically to give you unique characters. You can't take 2 the same, for example. So yeah, that main section there, 3, basically is the number is the attacks that you do. So you can see there's that red fist in the side, which shows that Captain America has physical attacks. You can see the numbers at the top right. So the first number, which looks like a crosshairs, is the range that attack will do. and we measure range using range templates. I'll come on to that in a second. The next one is the strength. So you can see that top one there has like a bit of like a dumbbell in it, and it has 5. That's the strength of the attack. That's how many dice you will roll. And then the last number there, which looks like kind of like an explosion type thing, that is the amount of power that it costs to do that action. So the top one you can see there, strike, doesn't cost any power. It is free to use. Whereas the shield slammer, the third one down there, costs 2 power. We'll come on to what power is in a second. Underneath that one, where it says number 4, it says that like they're basically a day unlike any other, and it says Affiliations, Avengers. Now, some characters are leader models, of which Captain America is leader of the Avengers, and they have like leader abilities. And if you have a squad of characters that are all affiliated, in this case as an Avengers affiliation, then you get to use these leader abilities. You don't have to do that, and we'll come on to that when we talk about squad building in a bit, but just something to remember. And then at the bottom of the card there, these are the superpowers. Now, unless the superpower actually says it's an action, you can use as many superpowers as you have power to pay for. So in theory, you could use your first action to move, you could use your second action to say strike, and then you can just keep doing superpowers as many power that you have to be able to spend. This allows you to kind of combine different bits and pieces as well. Some powers basically are active powers that you can use in your sort of turn while you're activating. Some are reactive powers where you can use them when you're defending. For example, Captain's Vibranium Shield here, he can use that one when he's defending against an attack. And some are what's called innate powers, which just mean they happen all the time. They're always in play, for example. So that's the kind of a bit of a brief rundown about how a card works. So yeah, we talked about movement. So movement in the game, if you're familiar with Star Wars Legion, for example, you'll have seen these kind of sort of hinged sort of movement templates. And you can see here in my hands, although I've sprayed them black and they're not the easiest to see, there is 3. So there's a short, a medium, and a long. And your character card will tell you which one to use. You can use a smaller movement template, but you can't use a larger one. And essentially what you do is basically you can sort of move that to where you want, and then you can put that up against your base and move along the movement template. So movement is very easy. The other one are range. So we talked about the range of Captain America's sort of attack. His strike was a range 2. So you would use a range 2 template to be able to kind of check the range. And the templates go 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can see there's a number of different ranges there, and a range 1, which is a thing as well, is basically the width of any of those templates. So across there is basically range 1. This keeps the game really simple when it comes to measuring attacks and measuring movement. I think it's a really kind of slick way for the game. Next up, we talked about power in the game, and power is basically the thing that allows you to do more powerful attacks and activate your superpowers. So how do you basically get power to be able to do that stuff? There's a few ways you can gain power in the game. So one is in the power phase. The power phase is the first step of every round, and everybody automatically gains power. You normally gain 1. Some characters gain a little bit more because they have abilities. Then you can gain power from certain attacks as well. So on that character card where you've got a list of attacks, there's what we would call 2 different types of kind of attacks. We have what are called builders, and we have what are called spenders. And builders are attacks which basically tend to cost 0 power or very low amounts of power, and they give you power for doing it. So it might say, for example, gain 1 power for every point of damage you inflict on the enemy, kind of thing. So that is one way of building power into your power pool. The other type of attacks are called spenders, and these are the ones that basically do not generate power, but they cost a lot of power to do, and these tend to be the more powerful attacks. They give you extra dice, or they have bonus abilities if you manage to kind of pull them off and stuff. So there's those 2 different types of attacks. Now, the third way, the interesting way to build power, is you get a point of power every time you take a point of damage. So when we were saying before about it's not always a bad thing to take some damage in the game, it's not always a bad thing to be kind of to be dazed because you go over to maybe a stronger side on your card. You're also generating power by taking damage. So as your character's basically being beaten up and getting more and more frustrated and more angry, they are generating power, which means they can come back stronger. So it brings in a unique aspect to the game of that as you're hitting on your opponent, unless you're actually going to take them out and stop them activating, you might think twice about actually sort of creating damage because you're actually giving them power to come back at you. And every character gets a maximum. You can hold a maximum of 10 power tokens. So yeah, be sure to kind of hit them wisely, shall we say. Now, dice in the game, this is a game that uses dice, but as with a lot of kind of Asmodee-based games, they have unique dice, and these are D8s. And these D8 dice, again, they come in the core set, and they're 8-sided, and they have, is it like 6 different symbols on the sides of them. And they are used for both attacks and for defending as well. So the different symbols, you can see the one at the top there is a critical hit symbol. There is one of these on the dice, and the critical hit counts as a success in both attacks and defense rolls, and it also allows you to add an additional die. So a bit like an exploding 8 type thing. If you roll a crit, you get to roll a second dice. If you roll a crit on that second dice, you don't get to kind of like sort of keep going on and on. You only ever get it on the first one. Next one there is the kind of the explosion symbol there. That is a hit, and there are 2 sides of the D8 that have the hit symbol, and this basically counts as a success when you're attacking. Then there is one wild symbol, that kind of swirl on the dice. Again, this counts as a success as well, but it sometimes triggers special rules. So on the character card, it'll tell you about the attack, and then some of those attacks, especially the more powerful ones, will have a wild symbol, and if you trigger that by rolling a wild symbol when you're attacking, something extra sometimes happens. The next one down with the shield with a little kind of explosion on it is a block symbol. There is one of these on the dice, and this is basically a success only when you're defending. The next one down, the skull, is a failure. This is always there is one of those as well, and it always means you failed. You cannot re-roll it, so if you have any special abilities that allow you to re-roll fails, you cannot re-roll a failure symbol unless you have abilities which specifically say that. And then there are 2 blank sides as well. Blanks basically are just failed. You do not succeed in an attack or a defense. However, if your character has abilities to allow you to re-roll misses, you can re-roll blank sides. So that's the dice basically. Now, what you also have is you have something called tactics cards. And these are basically special kind of sort of special team powers, basically, or cinematic events that you can use during the game. If you're just starting to play for the first time, I'd potentially kind of give them a miss. You get a good chunk of them in the core set, and these are the cards that you will also get with expansions. As you buy more characters, you'll get more cards in there as well. But basically, they cost power to use, and you choose them as part of your roster at the start of a game. In the current rules at the minute, you choose 8 of these cards to include in your roster, and then when you know what threat level you're playing your game at, but with the mission, you then whittle 8 cards down to 5 that you will take into your squad. That's about to change in the new update of the rules. You're allowed to take 10 of these cards, and you still choose 5 for your main mission. They are basically one-use cards, so you can use them at any point in the game, and once they're used, they're used up. Some you can use on your turn, some you can use on your opponent's turn, some you can use at any point. Now on these cards, you can see at the top there's the name. This one is Cosmic Invigoration. Number 2 there basically is where it says Cabal, and this is the squad affiliation, and this indicates which kind of affiliations, like Avengers for example, can take that particular card. So cards will either say unaffiliated or they will have an affiliation name. So for example, if you take Captain America as your leader and you take the Avengers, you then couldn't take this tactics card as part of your squad. The type underneath there basically is where it says active there. It denotes when the card can be played. As I said before, some can be played in your turn, some can be played in your opponent's turn. So it's either active or reactive. And then below that, where it says number 4, is basically the rules of the card. What is the card actually doing? So that tells you how to play the card. Now, a little bit of a breakdown about the kind of like the rounds and how the rounds work. So the first phase is the power phase, and the power phase happens at the start of every round. This is basically where all characters gain 1 power, unless your character has an ability that lets you gain more, and then you resolve any kind of effects or crisis cards that occur in the power phase. Next up is the activation phase, and during the activation phase, players basically take turns to activate one model. You do your 2 actions and your superpowers, and then once you've finished activating that model, you put a token next to it to say the model's activated, and you then pass over to your opponent, and they activate one of their models, and you go backwards and forwards until everyone's used them up. Now, basically, you can't activate a character that has already activated, and you can't activate a character that is dazed. So basically, that's one of the reasons why you might want to attack certain models to try and get their kind of energy, to get their energy down, get their health down, to make them dazed, because that means that in this round, they then can't activate. So that's one reason to do it. And then basically, once everyone's done their activations, it's the end of that round and it goes to the cleanup phase. And in the cleanup phase, basically, players score their victory points. So this is where you look at the different missions and see how to score points, and you add up your victory points, and you check any sort of effects on crisis cards or anything like that, or any effects on the players that happen in the cleanup phase. You move the round tracker along to the next one, and then you go back to the power phase and start the next phase. And you get one of these in the core set, which has got 2 sides to it, a yellow side and a blue side, for no other reason that it looks nice. And along the bottom there, you can see it says 1 to 6. That's the different rounds. So you play 6 rounds, and you can see at the top there it has 1 to 16, and that's where you track your victory points. And the idea of the game is to be the first person to get 16. And if both players get 16 points at the same time, you play an extra round until there's a clear winner. And if both players get more than 16 at the end of the round, whoever has the most points is declared the winner. So at the start of a game, when you're building a roster, before you even know what your mission is, before you're deciding which characters to take, we have to build a roster. And what you do is you take 6 crisis cards, 3 of the secures and 3 of the extraction. That's these red and blue ones here. Although they're both blue, they're red and blue. They're red and blue on the backs of the cards as well, so you can tell the difference. So you take 3 each of them. Now, as you kind of buy more expansions, you'll get more of these cards, and you get more choice of the kind of missions that you like to play. Certain factions will basically maybe benefit a little bit more from certain crisis cards. So there's a tactics to that kind of side of the thing as well. However, again, the rules are changing very slightly now, where in the past you used to kind of pick and ban these. Now what you do is these are basically, you have your 6 cards, and then they're pretty much just picked at random now to stop that sort of first player sort of always getting to choose the one they want and then basically kind of playing into it. So that's changing slightly. Next, you take 10 team tactics cards. These are the ones that we were talking about before, the ones that give you kind of like special powers. You take 8 in the current rules. It's changed to 10 very soon. And then you take 10 characters. Now, there's no maximum threat level for the 10 characters that you choose. However, once you've chosen the mission that you're going to do, and you know what the threat level is, you then whittle that 10 character roster down to the amount of characters that make up the kind of. So, for example, if it was a 17-point mission, you've got 17 points to choose from your 10 character roster, and this makes it really interesting. It means that you don't know for certain which kind of build you're going to take. It means that you have to be able to kind of adapt on the fly, because you don't know what the points are going to be in that game. However, yet again, if you're just new to the game, don't worry about kind of randomizing that. Just say, like, what, we're going to play a 17-point game today. I'll pick 17 points of models. You pick 17 points of models. Let's just play the game. So the game it can work from a very casual kind of narrative type of game to a very competitive, almost like a bit of a meta in the background type thing. So yeah, so that's basically how that works. Now, we spoke before about affiliations, and what happens is Atomic Mass Games have on their website a list of affiliations, and this tells you which characters are affiliated with which different things. This is just an example here, so we can see there is Air Force, there's Asgard, there's Avengers, there is Black Order, and there is Brotherhood of Mutants. There's loads more as well, things like Cabal, and there is Guardians of the Galaxy, there is Criminal Syndicate, there's Web Warriors, lots of different sort of affiliations. And some characters will be in more than one affiliation. Now, in order to get an affiliation, you need at least half of your mod, or you need more than half, sorry, not at least, you need more than half of your characters to share that affiliation. So for example, if there's sort of, let's say there's 5 characters in your list, as long as 3 of them share the same affiliation, they can be classed as that affiliation. So as you collect kind of models and as you collect characters over time, you can kind of build certain kind of affiliation lists, if you like. However, if you're just new to the game, you just want to kind of play casually, you just want to buy the models that you like the look of, there is nothing stopping you from playing any characters you like. It doesn't matter whether they're heroes, it doesn't matter whether they're villains. You can just buy the characters you like and you can put them on the table and play the game. If you want to play super competitively, there's some benefits to kind of to being affiliated and using those leader abilities, but you don't have to. It's quite flexible in that way. And this list is updated regularly as new models release. This list gets updated regularly by Atomic Mass Games. So that is essentially basically how the game plays. What's the best way to kind of to get into the game? Now, even now, after kind of 2 years, the best way to get into this game is still to buy into the core set. The core set basically has, I'm going to have to count them now because I can't remember. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think there's 10 models actually. There's a one missing from that picture. I think Doc Ock is missing from that picture. Yeah, there's 10 models in that core set, 5 per side, 5 for the Avengers, 5 for Evil Cabal, the villains, and each of those 2 basically add up to 17 points threat in for each side. So if you wanted to get started and just play against a friend as a 2-player starter set, you can quite happily play Avengers against Cabal, you can play Captain America against Red Skull, and there are 2 17-point lists in there. Included in this box are all the dice that you need, all of the measurement tools, the measurement gauge things, these bad boys. And there's also some terrain in there as well, and I wasn't aware that there was terrain when I first saw this set a while ago. So there's a couple of plastic cars, there's a couple of like dumpsters, there is a Daily Bugle kind of newsstand in there, there's a couple of lampposts and a couple of traffic lights. There's also like a little rubbish bin as well in there. And there's quite a lot of stuff in that core set. You obviously get all of the character cards as well, all these character cards. You get these crisis cards as well. These, what they're called? These like special power card things, I forget what they are. And you get all these crisis cards. You also get an absolute bucket full of tokens as well that you use for different things, like tracking the different objectives on the battlefield, tracking with different effects that happen, marking things like damage, marking things like power. So it is without a doubt still the best way to get started with the game. You can, in theory, buy this and never buy anything more. There's enough in here to be able to go into a competitive kind of sort of arena and play competitively. You have 10 models there, so you can have your 10 model roster. You have a mixture of characters where you could sort of have more than half and make a Cabal faction. You could have more than half and make an Avengers affiliation. You have all the different cards and stuff. So in theory, the game itself isn't that kind of expensive to play. Where it starts to get a bit more expensive is if you want to collect and you want to chase the meta and you want to try and sort of list build and craft a bit. But I would say that there's a real balance to the game where, as a game, it stands alone from that core set. As a collector, you just buy what you want, and then actually you can still play with whatever you buy. You're not limited. It's not like you're playing something like 40k and you're a Space Marine player, but you really like that new Orc release. But if I buy it, I can't use it in my games. That doesn't happen in this game. And this is basically how the range releases. Basically, there's about 104 characters that have been released now in the last 2 years. Each of these boxes come with the character in it. They're all hard plastic multi-part kits. They come with the character cards. Some of them come with extra crisis cards. Some of them come with extra sort of ability cards. They come with tokens that are sort of relevant. Some, for example, for the Dormammu one there, come with like a little mission thing to play as well. So there's lots of different things in them. Most of the kind of characters come in a box with 2 characters in. You can see there the Captain American War Machine is a box with 2 in. Some of the models are some of the boxes are a little bit bigger and just come with single characters. But yeah, there's a lot of choice. They're not the cheapest models, but I personally think there's some decent value in them. They're 32mm scale, so they're a little bit bigger than some 28mm stuff. And personally for me, I'm enjoying building them, I'm enjoying painting them, and I'm enjoying playing the game. So I feel like I'm getting value out of them. But I do appreciate people might look and just think, oh wow, like it's quite expensive for 1 or 2 models. But there again, the game doesn't use a lot of models. It's just expensive to collect. It's not expensive to play, I would say. Now, what Atomic Mass Games have also done is they've been selling terrain packs as well. So you do get some terrain in the core set. They also sell other terrain packs. Now, these again are all hard plastic. The quality of them is fantastic. They're not the cheapest on the market, but they are very nice. But when it comes to Marvel, there is a lot of choice. From things like different 3D printed files. I'm a big fan of Corvus Games Terrain. I've printed off a lot of their stuff. TT Combat and War Cradle Scenics do some really nice MDF stuff for the game. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, and actually it's not massively out of scale with other stuff. It doesn't always have to be like a New York kind of town that you play in. You can play it in like a desert and make it like New Mexico, where kind of Thor's hammer was found. You can make it like up on a space station somewhere, something like Guardians of the Galaxy. The Marvel universe is so wide spanning over lots of different kind of places that you can kind of get away with using a lot of terrain that you already have from other games, and the scale isn't there sort of like a massive difference. So that's pretty much it when it comes to Marvel Crisis Protocol. That's how the game plays. I personally think it's one of the slickest rule sets I've ever played. I think it's a game that it's fast to play, it's fast to pick up. There's a lot of deep tactics in it. It can get really deep once you start to look in, trying to kind of sort of theory craft. Well, these are the kind of the crisis ones that I would really like to happen. And if I get this particular point what level, I'll do this list. And if I get this other point level, I'll do that list. And trying to kind of like theory craft and second guess that kind of stuff. You can, as I said before, you can buy whatever you want and play whatever you want. There's no limit in like, well, I play Avengers, but I really like that kind of Green Goblin model. If you like Green Goblin, buy Green Goblin, play him in your Avengers list. It's absolutely fine. Collecting can be expensive, as I said before. It's normally kind of in the high £20 for like a box with 2 models in. There's about 104 models, as I said before. If you're a collector and you feel the need to have everything that's out there, it's going to get expensive. But you don't need them to play the game. Don't think that you have to have them, therefore the game is very expensive. You can buy the core set to get started, and then over time you can add in a couple of characters here and there, the ones you like if you're just playing for kind of casual play. And if you're playing competitively, you can kind of craft the list you want and then just sort of look and see which models you need and buy those particular models. I also think as well as that, as I said before, you can play this way where you're kind of like you're playing to kind of like randomly generate the lists, or you can play really casually and just say to a friend, look, we're gonna do this one, this spider infected invade Manhattan. We're playing that one tonight. 17 points. Bring your 17-point list, and we'll just play that kind of thing. And again, with the team tactics cards, these kind of special ability ones, you can choose to completely ignore them when you're first starting out if it's one more thing to kind of complicate things. But then once you get to grips with the game, you can add them in. And it absolutely gives some nice kind of like last-ditch moments just when you think it's all lost. Oh, I've got this card that lets me kind of heal up or something like that. And all of a sudden it's kind of game on again. So for me, It's a really, really unique game. I honestly think it is one of the best miniatures games out there. I purposefully said I was not going to talk about Marvel Crisis Protocol on this channel because I was kind of keeping it as a game for my hobby. I talk about games every day of the week. That's my job now. This is what I do. So I wanted something that was just my hobby to kind of like to keep in the background and not talk about it. However, I am enjoying this game so much. I find I can't not talk about it, hence why I've done this video tonight. So yeah, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Is it a game that you're interested in? Is the price putting you off? Have you learned something tonight that maybe you didn't know about it? Or is it something that's maybe on your list to try out? Let me know. Thanks for watching my video. I hope that you really enjoyed it. And if you did, why not consider clicking on the suggested video below to see more of the work that I've done. If you'd like to support the long-term sustainability of this channel, why not consider checking out my Patreon, where you can pledge and support from as little as $2 a month, and there is lots of different tiers and bonuses which will give you access to a private Discord server. It will give you free t-shirts, free mugs, a podcast every month, and a number of other things, including getting your name at the end of every video, like these awesome folks who already support me now.